Have you ever imagined having your dignity put to the test on the very night when the whole world speaks of love, forgiveness, and new beginnings? Christmas Eve usually carries a different emotional weight, doesn't it? The streets are full, the air is hurried, people are rushing around with presents in their hands, while others carry only the weariness of a difficult year. It is in this intense, almost suffocating atmosphere that this story begins. One of those that seem ordinary at first glance, but that hide truths capable of turning everything upside down. It was Christmas Eve, one of those days when the clock seems to tick faster, emotions run high, and any harsh word can become a wound. Amidst this scene, a black woman enters almost invisibly. Simple, discreet, without flashy clothes, without the posture of someone seeking attention. Beside her is her biological mother, a woman marked by time, by silence, and by choices that fate never quite explained. The two carry something that no one there can see, a buried past, full of absences, unspoken pains, and questions that were never answered. Perhaps you've experienced something similar, being in a place where nobody knows who you really are, where glances pierce through, judgments arise without permission, and respect seems to depend on appearance, status, or money. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you more than you imagine. On the other side of this story is him, a powerful billionaire, accustomed to being obeyed, feared, and revered. A man who enters any room knowing that his presence commands silence. For him, that night was just another obstacle before a lavish celebration. Impatient, arrogant, with a sense of superiority sharpened by years of privilege, he didn't see people, he saw obstacles. And when his eyes meet those of that black woman and her mother, something within him decides in seconds who they are and how much they are worth. Stories of humiliation often begin like this, with a quick judgment, a harsh word, a gesture of contempt. In environments of power, whether an office, an institution, or anywhere where money talks, reverse humiliation often stems precisely from the certainty that the other person has no voice, no authority, and no importance. And perhaps that is what most revolts those who witness this type of story, realizing how prejudice and arrogance hide behind seemingly banal attitudes. While the billionaire asserts himself, he has no idea that this silent woman holds something that could dismantle everything he believes he controls. She doesn't react, doesn't argue, doesn't explain herself, she simply observes. There's a strange force in this silence, almost uncomfortable. A silence that seems to say, if you knew who was standing before you. Have you ever felt that? That feeling that something big is about to happen even when no one else notices? The biological mother remains by her daughter's side, steadfast, like someone who has already lost too much to be afraid. Between them, there is a bond that goes far beyond blood. It is complicity, survival, and a story that never had the space to be told. That night, however, everything begins to align in an almost cruel way, as if fate had chosen Christmas Eve to settle old scores. The contrast is clear. On one side, money, power, and arrogance. On the other, simplicity, dignity, and a truth hidden in plain sight. And it is precisely when the billionaire believes he is in absolute control of the situation that the invisible gears of destiny begin to turn. What he didn't know would change everything that night. And from then on, every detail matters more than it seems. And perhaps that's exactly why stories like this affect us so deeply. Because at some point in life, almost everyone has been judged without being heard, measured by an appearance, a condition, or a label that never told the whole story. While this woman remains, silent, upholding her own dignity even in the face of humiliation, something within the viewer begins to stir. A memory, an old pain, or perhaps just the uncomfortable feeling of recognizing that scene in situations we have already lived or witnessed. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. It could be a similar experience, a feeling that has been awakened, or even an opinion about this role reversal that is beginning to take shape. When you comment, this story ceases to be just mine or yours. It becomes a space for exchange, where other people also feel less alone by recognizing their own experiences. And if at any point you thought, this happens more than it should, liking this video is a simple yet powerful way to say that this type of content matters. Each like helps this message reach further, reaching those who might need exactly this kind of story today, especially on a date as meaningful as Christmas Eve. Subscribing to the channel is also part of that. It's like saying, I want to keep listening to stories that reveal hidden truths, that speak of justice, dignity, and the twists and turns that life insists on throwing at us. Your presence here strengthens this community and allows more stories like this to continue being told with depth, respect, and emotion. And while you reflect, comment, like, or join us, the scene remains there, suspended in time. The billionaire still hasn't realized the abyss that is beginning to open beneath his own feet. The black woman remains steadfast, sustaining a silence that carries far more than words. And the truth, patient, awaits the exact moment to reveal itself, because some nights weren't meant to end as they began. The atmosphere changes when his voice rises. It's not a shout, but it's not a simple comment either. It's that sharp tone of someone used to giving orders, someone who believes money buys silence and obedience. People around notice. Immediately, conversations dwindle, glances are averted, some pretend to check their phones. Nobody wants to get involved. Nobody wants to be the next target. And it is precisely in this space of silence that humiliation finds fertile ground to grow. He looks the black woman up and down, as if assessing something out of place. The judgment comes before the words. It comes in the impatient sigh, the eye roll, the expression that makes it clear that, in his mind, that presence shouldn't be there. The words that follow are harsh, unnecessary, laden with a prejudice disguised as authority. He speaks as if he were correcting someone inferior, as if he were doing her a favor by tolerating that situation for a few more seconds. There's a heavy silence in the air, a silence that hurts more than sound. Some people sense the awkwardness and feel second-hand embarrassment. Others just watch, motionless, trapped in their own cowardice. The biological mother lightly squeezes her daughter's hand in, an almost invisible gesture but full of meaning. It's as if she were saying without words, I am here. And this small gesture carries an entire story of abandonment, resistance, and survival. What is most striking is not what he says, but what she doesn't say. The woman remains standing, her posture firm, her gaze serene. There are no tears, no argument, no attempt to justify herself. Instead, there is dignity, a dignity that disconcerts, because whoever humiliates expects a reaction, expects submission or an explosion. And when they receive neither, they momentarily lose control of the narrative. This scene isn't just about economic power. It's about mentality. It's about how some people make decisions based on appearance, skin tone, and the clothes someone wears. It speaks of a hidden truth that spans generations, the idea that respect needs to be earned through external symbols, not recognized as something human. And there, in that seemingly ordinary space, this logic begins to be exposed in a raw way. As he continues speaking, convinced he is right, something breaks inside those who are watching attentively. There is indignation, yes, but there is also a silent question echoing. How long will scenes like this continue to be normalized? The black woman absorbs every word without lowering her head, not out of weakness but by choice. There is a huge difference between enduring and submitting, and those who have already traveled a long inner journey learn, sooner or later, that not every battle needs to be fought with a voice. The prejudice there isn't explicit, but it's evident. It hides in phrases laden with contempt, in orders disguised as formality, in gestures that say more than any direct insult. It's the kind of humiliation that leaves deep scars because it attempts to diminish not only the person, but the entire history they carry. Yet they remain whole. There is a silent strength in those who know their own truth, even when the world insists on denying it. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because this silence is not empty. It is constructed. It is born from accumulated experiences, conscious choices, and an internal transformation that doesn't happen overnight. To understand why she endures everything without reacting, it's necessary to look behind the scenes of her own life, to the decisions that shaped her mindset, to the pains that taught her when to speak and when to wait, and to the clarity of someone who knows exactly who she is, even when no one else does. There are times when the impact of a situation lies not in the immediate response, but in what is being prepared behind the visible backdrop. Her silence is not surrender, it's strategy, it's awareness. It's someone who understands that certain revelations only make sense when they emerge at the right time. While he believes he is winning, she has already walked this path many times. She has been underestimated before, she has been made invisible, and she has learned that the truth, when revealed, doesn't need shouting to be heard. Those watching feel the discomfort growing because they realize that this public humiliation will not go unpunished. There's something in the air, an almost palpable tension, as if each word he utters is building his own collapse. And the question becomes inevitable. Why did she endure it all in silence? What does she know that no one else there knows? What kind of truth is about to emerge from this seemingly unequal situation? Ultimately, this scene speaks of journeys that intersect unexpectedly, of people who carry entire stories without needing to announce them, and of how decisions made on impulse, driven by arrogance, often reveal much more about the one who humiliates than about the one who is humiliated. The transformation begins precisely there, when the mask of power begins to crack and reality approaches, silent but relentless. And before we continue, if this part of the story resonated with you, write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it's precisely when everything seems settled that the details begin to reveal a hidden truth. While the humiliation still echoes in the air, something subtle begins to stir behind the scenes. Nothing blatant, nothing obvious. They are small signs, almost invisible to those too distracted by their own ego. But for those who observe attentively, it becomes clear that the scene is incomplete. A piece is missing, and it's about to appear. An employee standing a few meters away changes his posture. His face hardens, his gaze shifts from the black woman to the billionaire and back quickly, as if he's just noticed something that doesn't fit. He swallows hard, adjusts his name tag on his chest, hesitates. There's a name printed on a document resting on the counter, partially covered by other papers. A surname that carries weight. A surname that doesn't usually go unnoticed in circles of power. But there, at that moment, no one seems willing to connect the dots. The woman walks in silence, but her eyes calmly scan the room. There is no fear in them. There is recognition, as if she knew exactly where she was stepping. Her biological mother, beside her, keeps her gaze downcast, but her hands tremble slightly, not from fragility, but from anticipation. For years, she has avoided this moment, years fleeing from memories that now seem to materialize right before them. The billionaire, in turn, continues talking, too sure of his decisions, too blind to perceive the real impact of each word. He ignores the nervous employee, ignores the document, ignores even the change in the surrounding atmosphere. When you're used to being the ultimate authority, your mind goes into automatic mode. He believes that nothing there can threaten his position, and it is precisely this mentality that puts him at a disadvantage. A phone call interrupts the flow of the situation. A short, insistent ring. The employee answers in a low voice, almost too respectful for someone who, seconds before, seemed only to be following orders. The tone of the conversation changes rapidly. The expression pales. There are questions that don't need to be asked aloud to be understood. The name mentioned on the other end of the line hangs in the air like a belated warning. At that moment, the black woman slightly raises her chin. It's not a gesture of defiance, but of presence, as if to say, I am here. Her silence begins to take on a different texture. It no longer seems like passivity. It seems like control. It seems like someone who deeply understands her own journey and knows that certain revelations need space to happen. Every second of waiting is a choice. Every restrained gaze is a calculated decision. There's something almost symbolic about this moment. The billionaire, surrounded by status symbols, ignores precisely what matters most. He underestimated the wrong person because he believed that power is always visible, noisy, dominant. He didn't realize that there are authorities who don't announce themselves, stories that don't need explaining, truths that walk silently until the exact moment they reveal themselves. The looks around begin to change. Where there was once embarrassment, now curiosity arises, a different kind of discomfort. People sense that something big is about to happen, even without understanding exactly what. It's as if the entire atmosphere is holding its breath. The humiliation, which previously seemed the high point of the scene, begins to lose its power in the face of the imminent feeling of a turning point. This is the kind of moment that separates appearance from essence, where decisions made on impulse reveal their consequences, where arrogance finds its limit. The woman says nothing, but her presence begins to speak for her. And the more the billionaire insists on asserting himself, the more evident it becomes that he doesn't have all the information. He doesn't know what goes on behind the scenes. He doesn't know the history that precedes him. He can't imagine the impact that night will still have. The truth, when it approaches, often leaves traces, a name repeated in a restrained tone, a document that changes hands, an employee who can no longer hide their nervousness. All of this adds up, piece by piece, as if fate were rearranging the scene for an inevitable revelation. And the most striking thing is to realize how often those who humiliate are so focused on maintaining their own image that they don't notice when the ground begins to crumble. This story isn't just about power or money. It's about inner transformation, about mindset, about the silent journeys that shape people long before they are recognized. It's about how some truths need to be ignored first so that the impact of the revelation is complete. And while the billionaire still believes he's in control, the invisible gears of reality have already begun to turn. There are times when the greatest turning point doesn't come from an immediate response, but from conscious waiting. And it is precisely in this waiting that everything begins to align towards something that no one there will be able to forget. If you feel you've experienced something similar, write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there comes a point when the truth ceases to be merely a distant possibility and begins to occupy the entire space of the room. It's when the air seems to grow heavier, when even those who don't fully understand what's happening feel that something irreversible has just begun. The employee returns, his steps restrained, his expression too rigid for someone who should be comfortable. He doesn't speak immediately. He looks first at the black woman, then at the mother beside her. Only then does he face the billionaire, as if internally struggling to choose the right words. The name is spoken in a low voice, but it sounds too loud. A full name, a title, a position that leaves no room for doubt. The highest authority in that place isn't on the other side of the door, nor on the phone. She's always been there, standing, being humiliated without reacting. The billionaire frowns, confused for a second, until the information finally finds its place within him. And when it does, it dismantles everything. The silence that forms is not as awkward as before. It is absolute. No. And moves, No one takes a deep breath. Power shifts silently. His face loses its color, his posture crumbles, his once puffed-out shoulders slump slightly. It is at this moment that pride begins to crumble, not from an external attack, but from the raw force of reality. He tries to speak, but the words fail to form, not because he lacks arguments, but because the impact is overwhelming. And then comes the second revelation, the one that wasn't in any document, but recorded in memories he tried to bury for decades. A physical detail, a line on her face, an involuntary gesture, something that makes his eyes fix on the older woman beside the authority figure he just recognized. Time seems to slow down when it all clicks. That woman is the same one he left behind, the same one he erased from his own history when he decided that success was worth more than any connection. Understanding comes like a silent blow. There are no screams, no accusations, just the truth, naked and inevitable. The black woman doesn't need to say a word to confirm what he already knows. The blood, the history, the journey, everything connects at once. The daughter he never acknowledged now occupies a position that places him beneath her, not out of revenge, but as a consequence. The decisions he made in the past return, organized, precise, impossible to ignore. The mother remains silent, but her eyes carry decades of renunciation, pain, and survival. There is no pleasure in his downfall. There is no explicit revenge. There is only the realization that life takes its toll in ways no one can control. The billionaire lowers his gaze for the first time, not before an institution, but before his own history. Money, there, is useless. It doesn't buy time, it doesn't erase choices, it doesn't rewrite paths. The daughter's authority asserts itself effortlessly. She remains calm, centered, whole. The contrast is almost cruel. While he is lost between belated regret and disbelief, she demonstrates a mindset built on overcoming, transformation, and self-awareness. Her journey didn't begin there. That night is merely the point where what unfolds behind the scenes finally becomes visible. The symbolic fall of power is evident, not because it was humiliated in the same way, but because it was confronted with something that no social position can avoid: the truth. Poetic justice happens exactly like that, without applause, without spectacle, just with the clear exposure of who we are. When all the masks fall, the surrounding environment feels the impact. Some people look away out of respect, others observe in silence, aware that they are witnessing something rare. It is not common to see someone lose so much without anything being taken by force. He loses because he realizes too late the weight of his own decisions. He loses because he underestimated a history he didn't know. He loses because he believed that power was permanent. And while he tries to reorganize his own identity in a few seconds, his daughter remains firm, not as someone who has won, but as someone who has arrived there whole. There is still much that needs to be said, wounds that have never been touched, truths that cannot be contained in a single revelation. The story doesn't end with this initial shock, because some consequences only begin to unfold after the silence settles in completely. If this moment resonated with you in any way, comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely after the impact of the revelation that the true lesson begins to take shape. When the noise of pride falls and silence settles in, only what cannot be bought remains. Christmas has this strange power to strip people bare. It amplifies contrasts, exposes intentions, reveals who we are when nothing else works as a shield. And there, in that scene, money loses its value definitively. The billionaire is still there, but he no longer occupies the same symbolic space. Not because someone expelled him, not because he was publicly humiliated, but because something inside him has shifted. The greatest defeat he faces is not public, not visible in the eyes of those around him, nor in official records. It is internal, morale. He realizes, perhaps for the first time, that he has spent his life making decisions that have distanced him from what is essential. He chose status when he needed to choose presence. He chose control when he needed to choose responsibility. And now, faced with the daughter he didn't acknowledge and the wife he abandoned, all of this presents itself as a balance impossible to ignore. Humility doesn't come as a pretty speech. It comes as a realization, like a mirror that doesn't distort. Judging by appearances seems harmless when you're at the top, but it exacts a high price when the whole truth comes out. The black woman, now recognized for her authority and her history, doesn't need to prove anything. She represents a journey built on difficult decisions, silent transformation, and a mindset that doesn't depend on the validation of those who were never there. Christmas, in this context, ceases to be just a date and becomes a catalyst. It illuminates what was hidden behind the scenes, bringing to light truths that were buried by convenience and fear. It is no coincidence that this encounter happens precisely there. It is as if life itself chose the most symbolic moment to show that there is no new beginning without confrontation, nor redemption without responsibility. The silent mother carries the hardest lesson of all. She survived without recognition, raised a daughter without support, and endured years of invisibility. And yet, when the truth emerges, there is no hatred. There is only the awareness that each person reaps the consequences of their own choices. This is a universal message that transcends any social class. Money can accelerate paths, but it doesn't erase consequences. What remains of this story is not the downfall of a powerful man, but the reminder that character always weighs more than wealth. That the way we treat those who seem to have nothing says a lot about who we really are, and that life, sooner or later, finds a way to bring us face to face with what we try to leave behind. This reflection doesn't end here, because some truths continue to resonate long after the initial shock. There are still unspoken feelings, decisions to be made, and impacts that only begin to reveal themselves when pride no longer occupies space. It is at this point that the story continues to unfold, not as punishment, but as a possibility for understanding. If this story made you think, comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because some part of this story resonated directly with you. Perhaps not through the details, but through the message that lingers when silence speaks louder than words. Stories like this aren't just about plot twists or poetic justice. They're about choices, about awareness, and about what life insists on showing us when we stop to listen. If this type of content makes you reflect, if it accompanies you during moments of pause or helps you see situations from another angle, it's worth subscribing to the channel. That way, you stay close to stories that don't treat the audience as distant spectators, but as part of the conversation, someone who also carries their own journeys and questions. And if you want to leave a record that you stayed until the end, write in the comments, "This message was for me." This helps create a space where viewers recognize themselves in others, where the experience doesn't end when the video finishes. If at any point you felt that connection, leaving a like is just a simple way of saying that this story resonated with you. It's a small gesture, but it keeps this type of content alive and circulating. There's a video over here that complements this topic very well. If it makes sense to you, click on it and continue watching it there.